A ton of people have grown up reading the numerous colorful tales of Dr. Seuss, and one of his most favorite stories is of the tree god he calls the Lorax. I always loved reading this short little cartoon, as it has the perfect mix of a fun, interesting concept, combined with a creepy cool semi-villain that turns good in the end. And besides, such fun words to say like Lorax, Once-ler, Trufula, Trees, and of course the Swami Swans. Rarely, when an old-fashioned story like this is turned into a modern, pop music-filled animated movie, I enjoy the movie even more, but in this case, the motion picture trumped Dr. Seuss's paper sketches. The reason for this is that the 2012 animated movie, The Lorax, added an even cooler aspect to the plot and twisted the story into a whole new way. If you haven't seen the film, I recommend doing so before watching this theory, as it will be entirely based around the aspects of the movie. Anyway, ready for a theory? Hey everyone, it's CTO of the Theory channel. In case you need a bit of a refresher, The Lorax is a movie about a boy named Ted who lives in a town called Thneedville. In this town, every single thing, from the trees to the shrubbery, is artificial, and nothing is natural. Ted is attracted to a girl named Audrey, who tells him that the one thing she would like most in the world is to see a real, living tree. After his grandma advises him to go seek out a mysterious man called the Once-ler, Ted travels outside of Thneedville and into a wasteland of pollution and tree stumps. There, he meets the Once-ler, who tells Ted the story of how all of the Trufula Trees got cut down. When the Once-ler was a boy himself, he was greedy and cut down all of the trees to create the booming business of the Thneed, despite the warnings of a mystical tree god-type creature called the Lorax. Meanwhile, Thneedville's mayor, Mr. O'Hare, becomes increasingly suspecting when Ted travels in and out of the city multiple times in order to hear more of the Once-ler's story. At the end of his tall tale, the Once-ler gives Ted the last remaining Trufula tree seed, who plants it right in the middle of town. And in the final scene of the movie, the Once-ler is seen venturing out of his tower, helping to water the growing trees, and even gets paid a visit from the Lorax himself. So it's a really nice story, enhanced and refreshed from the way Dr. Seuss told it. But what's my theory? Well, there are a ton of mysterious, fishy, borderline conspiracy-worthy moments throughout the whole film, and most of them do have to do with this man, the Once-ler. We know that he and his family took over and obliterated the whole Trufula Tree area, really without even looking back at what they did. It was only years later, after the Once-ler ran out of trees, thereby losing his business, that he truly realized how horribly he abused the Trufula trees, and just all of nature in general. But what if I told you that none of the destruction was his fault? That O'Hare is actually the protagonist of the whole film, and that Ted and Audrey could be treated as the villains. The Trufula trees and the whole Trufula area have always been treated as pretty mystical and special. Trufula trees are clearly not ordinary trees, and this clearly isn't an ordinary forest. The Dr. Seuss wiki states that the trees have typically a warm color, red, orange, yellow, pink, or purple, and that they give off a smell of butterfly milk. Their touch is apparently softer than silk, making it a pretty luscious tree all around. Meanwhile, the Swami Swans and Hummingfish, who both live in the Trufula area, capitalize on the listening sense. The swans have a sugar-sweet chirp, and the fish have a perfectly pitched hum. And finally, the barbaloots, who are associated with both sight and taste. They're probably the cutest creatures in the forest, pleasing the eyes of humans, and tend to eat Trufula food like the fruit on the trees, as well as sugary human food like marshmallows. This forest encaptures all of the five senses, making it a perfect place to be with a paradise-like connotation. Where am I going with this? Well, if you've ever read The Hunger Games, you know that the 50th Games had a paradise-like arena. Everything was perfectly pretty, the meadow, the sky, the mountain, and the animals, which caused every tribute except Haymitch to stay on their pedestal for minutes after the gong. Then, they realized that everything, even though pretty, turned out to be lethally poisonous, the ultimate trap for most of the tributes. I'm not in any way saying that the whole Trufula forest is poisonous, or lethal, or anything like that, but I am saying that it's entirely addictive. From the scent and sight of the trees to the sounds of the swans and fish, the area is unresistible for humans. Even look at the physical structure of the Trufula tree. The tuft on the top is in the shape of a swirl, making it seem related to some type of hypnosis. This can be the cause of everything that the Once-ler did. Notice how he was always rejected by his family, causing him to have a gloomy early life, but when he comes into the Trufula forest, he suddenly seems happy and even at home. The Once-ler became addicted to the Trufula trees, using them until he had nothing left. And when he had nothing left, what happens? He once again turns sad and depressed, as shown by the fact that he's been living by himself in a boarded-up shack for years. The Trufula forest was his only salvation, and he became addicted to it, meaning that we can't really blame the Once-ler for all of his destruction. He's just a victim of the magnet-like forest, pulled in by its wonders. I mean, we don't see any other human in the area in the Once-ler story, meaning the Once-ler could be the only human to ever discover it. When his mule wakes him up, there's pure awe on his face when he sees the Trufula lands, already seducing and hypnotizing him, which is why none of his actions were his fault. There's one more thing that backs this theory up, though. One more blatantly obvious connection that would only really make sense if this idea really were true. Have you ever wondered why the Lorax even exists at all? Why does he guard the trees in the first place? Well, here's your answer. The Lorax is there so that no one becomes incredibly seduced by the Trufula forest, and so that no event like this ever occurs. And what is the Lorax's true job? Is it to protect the forest, or is it to protect the people from the forest? There might be a reason he makes it very vague. I think this is pretty tremendous evidence, though, that the Trufula forest is, in fact, addictive. It makes much more sense that the Lorax was created to guard the forest because it's dangerous, than to guard the forest to simply protect the trees, especially since the Once-ler is most likely the only one to ever have found it. And this means that in these scenes, the Lorax is actually trying to help and save the Once-ler because he knows what will happen if he doesn't. Unfortunately, the Lorax doesn't succeed in doing this, and it results in the destruction of the whole forest. But at least we now know that his intentions were good, it wasn't the Once-ler's fault, and that if anyone's to blame here, it's the Swami Swans. There's a whole other part to this theory, one that involves Ted, Audrey, and O'Hare, but in order to make this video not too long, I am splitting it into a separate part, to be published next week. Make sure to check it out in 7 days, as I would never want you leaving my theories on cliffhangers, and yes, I know that's what I'm doing right now. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any future theories. See you later.